one's the thingy?
I'll use the bottom one. Facebook on the top. Forms, sorry.
Bismillah. You're not signed in at the same time, are you? My account's the only one which is linked to it. What's the problem? In that.
Freezing light screen. Doesn't have to fun.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Okay. Alaikum salam. So why don't we just do directly from the computer if there's a way? Forget your app. Just cancel that idea. Just give me the Facebook page and let me just choose it myself.
Okay.
I might be able to pick up the webcam and just do it straight. Definitely. So then the laptop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. You said your page was fine. It needs to be straight, Shaz. It needs to be straight. You don't need this anymore. Put what you want wherever you want to. Put what you want wherever you want to. You're gonna do it by Wi-Fi.
Just put them eating.
Oh. Do you need anything else plugged in?
Just take the screens over.
Or the text. This one. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك يا رب الكريم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So hello and welcome to also our guests who are joining us online on Facebook and those from the media and so on. This video or this stream, I guess, was the decision to go with it was, I think, in observing just generally what the need seems to be out there. There's obviously a lot of confusion and many people have questions, and I guess there's a natural inability to answer some of those questions for common sense reasons, because people just genuinely don't know how to answer them. And then there are those other matters which I would put in a category of human matters, and that is that look, I'm sitting in front of everyone here, and even though you can see a religious hat, and I guess that's the hat of the Imam, and therefore I'm representing the Muslim community as such, the truth is that I also have another hat, which is a more generic hat, and is my primary hat, and that is as a normal person, like all of the Muslims, human beings, and then specifically Mancunians who live in Manchester. And the problem is that I want to be able to express and speak on a human level. I want to respond and react on a human level, but that's not possible at the moment because of what's happened and because of a very real involvement from a Muslim. And that's something that the Muslim community, and I'm addressing all communities in this video, all of us have to just be very accurate with how we speak and how we respond at a time where understandably we as people, as human beings, are very angry. It's not right just to say that somehow the white non-Muslim community in Manchester is angry. because that would be a huge insult to the rest of the other faiths, and especially the Muslim faith, as if they are being seen as someone separate. Of course, faith communities are separate in certain ideological and theological ways, but ultimately, when you are a citizen of this country, or even more so if you are born in this country, and then even more so if you are from a specific area, then you have a right to respond as a normal human being. You have a right to have your normal emotional response to a situation. And we are all very angry, and we are all very upset. And in the rhetoric that comes in the aftermath of such a disaster, where there are people who want many answers, people want accountability, people want revenge, retaliation, people want just understanding. There are people on the left, on the right, there are people who are just, they genuinely don't know what to say, what to do, how to react. Those people need to remember that the Muslim community is part of that demographic too. They are also struggling in how to respond. And when I sit here in front of you trying to respond as calmly and as a leader should, I'm struggling because I need to respond in my own personal way, because we've lost our children. And if however difficult that might be for people to understand, there are no such thing as other people's children. So our children were taken on that night. It doesn't matter that they were of a different religion, or they weren't, whether they lived in the city or they didn't, whether they were visiting for the concert, or whether they were just outside, whether they were picking up the children, whether they were attending. It doesn't matter their age or whatever. While we sit here and talk about the aftermath, while we start looking at recrimination, whilst we try to work out how to and start demanding silly demands like from people that we've seen in the public sphere, unfortunately, what we're forgetting is that there are humans who are suffering, and especially so the friends and family of those that have lost their loved ones or those who are injured. While we sit here and ruminate and discuss and talk and debate, how's that going to help Safi Russol's family? How's that going to help her sister Ashley, who's still injured, her mother Lisa, who's still there, Olivia Campbell's parents? How does John Atkinson's family get to deal with this? How do Nell Jones's family, Kelly Brewster's, all of these families, whilst we sit here and deal with the politics and the nonsense? And I don't just mean the angry side. I'm also talking about the peaceful side, quote unquote. You know, I get it. People want to show that Manchester's united and one love and Manchester's strong, and I've been part of that. I accept it. And visual this and candle light that and 1 minute silence and time to quote scripture that whoever kills one person, then it's like they've killed mankind, and whoever saves one life, then he has also like he has saved mankind. You know what? People don't want to hear that right now. And the families themselves, they don't want to hear that right now, and it's not going to help them right now. And I think maybe I should focus just on the Muslim community, online and here in Manchester and around the world, that when something like this happens, okay, I understand, as a Muslim, I understand how much pressure we come under, even though we have nothing to do with this. Genuinely, we don't. Yes, a Muslim does it. Yes, there are Muslims that actually propagate this ideology out there, and they have been successful in pulling off a number of attacks and a number of terror realities in countries in the West and in the East. And yes, you should also know that Muslims are the ones who are the biggest victims and so on. But now is not the time to claim victimhood ourselves. And we know how difficult it is. Every Muslim who's watching this and observing this knows that, and only other small minority groups can possibly understand. The black community in America, the Irish community back 20 years ago. Only other communities can understand that when one prominent member or a number of prominent members from that community goes and does something, just how difficult life becomes for the others. And I know that, and we know that, but we have to recognize that under the pressure of worrying about ourselves, we have to put that aside and remember that there is a real human tragedy that deserves that focus, that concentration, that response that's dedicated to them, that is in their care and in their benefit. And we put our agenda aside. And that is a mistake that Muslims have done. They've unfortunately, And I don't want the Muslim community to be, jumping on my shoulders and saying, you're belittling our reality, whatever. I'm not belittling your reality. I know that reality. My wife wears the face veil. She, today, I find, 3 days later, that she tells me to go and get the milk. And she never tells me to go and get the milk. I said, what do you mean there's no milk? She goes, I haven't left the house since thinking. I didn't realize that. Can you believe that? I mean, I'm in my own world, dealing with whatever I'm dealing with, and I've just realized my wife, who goes out every single day, hasn't actually left the house. I didn't even consider that. She goes, is it safe to go out? I thought, what a stupid question. Then I thought to myself, maybe it's not so stupid, because I don't cover my hair and I don't cover my face, and so I don't undergo or experience her reality. So we know, and we have our own problems, but this is not time for our problems. We have to focus on the need of the greater community, and that greater community is all of us. And the fact that we have been hit very hard by a people who themselves are very proudly and very prominently calling themselves Muslims. ISIS, Daesh, Qaeda, Shabab, Boko Haram, their generic reality is an Islamic sect, cult, whatever, but they consider it to be Islamic. They are offshoots of a generic group called the Khawarij, or in Orientalist terms, the Kharijites. Okay, and it's not possible for any Muslim who has half a brain or any education to say this is non-Islamic or this is not from the religion. It is. This is a religious group, a splinter group, a deviant, extreme ideology, but from the religion, that have decided to create for themselves a template from the religion, a template using the scriptures, using the Quran primarily, and using then the statements and actions of the Prophet ﷺ, cherry picking and twisting whatever they need to create that narrative, and then hoping and depending upon other things to go their way, because this will never be sufficient enough. Even the most deviant and the most ignorant one of the religion, it's not sufficient for that person alone to be able to use that ammunition, quote unquote, and go ahead and do this disastrous things. It's not possible. They need other factors. So they need a instigating reality, such as foreign policy, or such as oppression, or such as politics, or such as even some racists in the street swearing at them or hitting them or whatever. So they need something to develop that emotional, that add that ignition. And they also need people who are so down in the dumps, whether that is socially, economically, whether that's whatever their background is, that they are so easy and so isolated already that they will become the mule, as it's being suggested today, to go and take and carry out that attack. If people are serious, and I hate talking about this, I swear to you by Allah, I hate to be in this position, not because I am not willing to speak about this. I lecture about this day and night. I lecture about the real causes of radicalization and extremism and deviation, and all of you know that. That's something well known. It's not that. I hate that we're doing this now, at a time where there are still families that don't know whether their missing one has died or not. And we're sitting here talking about, how we're getting attacked, and we're sitting here talking about this is why these things happen. You must, Muslims and non-Muslims have to understand. Muslims who are speaking out there in the media, this is not about you. It's about them. It's about the people who are hurting. And non-Muslims who are out there and watching and listening, understand that Muslims really don't know what to do. We don't prepare for this. This is not something that, you will hear this a million times, but it genuinely isn't from our religion. We don't go out there and think, right, that when this person goes and does this, then we're going to then trot out so-and-so and make them just read off this script and say blah-de-blah, blah-de-blah. It doesn't happen like that. However much, and look, there are people out there in the public who are public personalities that are well known, like people like Piers Morgan, for example, or even sportsmen, or like Michael Vaughan and other folks who, and I'm going to get some hate for this, but I really like these characters. I've always been a Piers Morgan fan, and there's a reason I'm saying that. Because people will see his very public and very open demands for this and that, whatever, and write him off as some kind of extremist or some kind of right-wing nutjob or whatever. Piers Morgan is no Tommy Robinson or Katie Hopkins. The public, they are behind that middle ground. And Piers Morgan is the middle ground. And I'm just using him as just an example. The masses definitely want answers. But when you have people like I respect him, he's an intelligent, educated man, and he goes and demands on Twitter, on TV, turn them out, turn them over, like as if we're hiding them in our houses, like as if we have cellars at home that they're in. expose them when you get an idea, as if Minority Report was a reality, as if the concept of pre-crime was something in true life. It's a Hollywood movie. It's nonsense. There's no such thing out there where that tells us that we are able to spot a person who's radicalized. If a Muslim guy was to come to me and say to me that, why didn't the white non-Muslim community report Thomas Mehr? I'd slap that person. Thomas Mehr is the terrorist who killed Joe Cox. Okay? I'd slap that person. I say, you're an idiot. What kind of stupid statement is that? If a person was to come and say to me, a Muslim was to come and say to me that, why didn't the family of Thomas Mehr put him forward or report him? I'd slap that person again. What do they think happens? How do they understand the criminal mind? That the criminal mind wants to go and advertises the fact that they're a criminal and lets everyone know, and so that they can then be caught, so that they can then be stopped. I mean, this is an absurdity. So the non-Muslim community, likewise, and to be honest, they are behind common sense and they're not going down that line. But when you see popular figures then start to say that, you really do wonder. You really do wonder. Do you genuinely believe that we hide these people? Are we not Muslims, the ones who have the most to lose every single time, have lost and have the most to lose? Compare the numbers of casualties around the world. It's nothing. You never want to belittle casualties, but it's nothing compared to millions around the world are affected directly. Muslims, I mean. The non-Muslim figures are tiny in comparison. But the reality now, at this time, is not to talk about that. It's talk about here. What's happened here? This guy was a Muslim. You can't take his identity off from him. You can't say because he went and did this, conveniently, wow, he's not a Muslim no more. Muslims got to understand, who are you speaking to? You're not speaking to stupid people. Don't insult them and don't insult yourself. If you have lost your child, or you've lost your sister or your mother, and someone comes and says to you, this person is not a Muslim, or he's not from Libya, or he's not from X, why are you denying just obvious realities? Deal with it honest and openly, and recognize what your strengths are, what your limitations are, what your restrictions are, and let's look at this and let's deal with this. And as I said, when you are faced with a situation like this, where you have that pressure for people that want some kind of action, and you've got this delicate balance where, and it is a delicate balance, right? I have my own personal responsibility. All of us have responsibilities. I have a personal responsibility as a religious figure, as a religious teacher, to be able to do his part and stand up and speak and teach what is correct. And when I come across a person like this, then too, either, I put it to you. On one hand, people want us to go and teach and refute and get rid of these thoughts and ideas from the people. On the other hand, they want them reported. Whoever is reported, we find that they are under surveillance, under the intelligence eye, and so on, and then it is out of our hands. If we're given if we take the responsibility ourselves to go and teach them, then we are still not appreciated for that. We're not recognized for doing that. We don't get paid for this. It's not our full-time job. Yet every scholar that I know in this country, from my own colleagues, from my own peer groups, from our own backgrounds, there is no bigger priority for them than to correct this scenario. My own colleague, Sheikh Yahya Ibrahim, he was here in Manchester at the British Muslim Heritage Centre only a few weeks ago, giving a lecture specifically on the roots of the Khawarij. You can Google that, you can put the link on the page, you can see the people who came. Do you think the terrorists come to that? Do you think these criminals come to that? Do you think that they care about what we say? They have reached a level, and I like I said, and I'm going to again use Piers Morgan just as a phrase to refer to the middle ground. It astonishes me, an educated man like that he knows that all he has to do is to research this with security sources. If he was to speak to any of the intelligence agencies, they would know that it's not the wider Muslim community that is causing or being negligent in this manner. The people are being reported. The intelligence so far, the majority of it is because of people reporting that. Because of signs being seen that there is something not right, that there's a person who is traveling to the wrong places and speaking to the wrong people and saying the wrong things and so on. That reporting is going on. Up until now, the majority of the cases is based upon human intelligence. I myself, I would say to Piers Morgan right now, have you actually spoken to anyone? Do you know anyone from the security agencies? Have you actually spent time with them and asked them what is the actual solution, as opposed to just going out and using sound bites online and on TV, just trying to whip up the public and express his emotions because he's angry? We're angry as well. We want to get rid of these people as well. They're asking us, do you know about this guy? Do you know about... I'm looking at the media to help me who this chap is. When this name was mentioned to me, I didn't know who he was. I'm calling, like everyone else, calling friends, going onto Facebook, looking into profiles. Who is this chap? Who is this person? Where did he come from? Is he born here? Is he not? And like everyone else now, we're finding out information, yes, that he was someone who was born here, he was traveling, he had problems, he had issues with his parents, his mother complained, went to the mosque and said that I'm worried about the child, he's not practicing, the mosque tried to speak to him, people tried to speak to him, and I'm talking on a basic level, I'm not talking criminality. We're talking at university, at college, whatever everyone else is finding out, that's what we're finding out. This idea is beyond insulting, that we hide these criminals, that we try to give them some kind of cover. This is incorrect, this is irresponsible, and I put to you, both communities, that if you dehumanize people's emotions, and I don't mean the criminals, I mean the normal people, you will leave them in an utter confused state. The Muslims are not ready to be able to understand what they have to do more. When I spoke to Charles Farr, and I don't mind telling you this, okay, who was at that time the head of security and intelligence services, we offer our help in every and any single way. I don't mind who calls us whatever, calls us spies, sellouts, this, that, whatever, whatnot, because I don't do it for Charles Farr, and I don't do it for the government, or I don't do it for anyone else. We do it because we want to protect our religion. We want to protect our scripture. We want to protect our sources and our practice and our normative Islam from the deviancy of these people who are absolutely hell-bent, literally hell-bent, in destroying it and using it for their own circumstances. The truth is that if we start to speak about the general causes, people will say it's not time now for politics. If it's not the time now for politics, then why are we trying to ask them for solutions? If you're not willing to assess the government's responsibility in this and their own radicalization programs, whether they've worked or whether they haven't, how is it possible that something like this happens and we do not hold our own counter-radicalization or counter-extremist programs accountable themselves? How is that possible? How is it possible that we blindly then continue to say and make a statement like the Home Secretary said, that we will continue to increase a program which is an utter failure? An utter failure. Because people will turn around and say, well, what else is there? Well, I tell you what, whatever else is there, it can't be a program that didn't help us and didn't save the situation and didn't find this guy that we have nothing to do with. So, listen, what I want to do out of this is to allow, especially non-Muslims and those that have got critical enough questions, the opportunity to ask those, okay, in an open Q&A session. So that's from online and here as well. So I want to move on to that because, listen, it doesn't matter what we say. People want to hear specific things that will soothe and calm them. And like I said, the not the irony, that's the wrong word, but the shame of it is that while we're sitting here bickering, or while we're sitting here trying to work out the next kind of, unified front in front of St. Anne's Square or whatever, there are people who are still suffering, who are still, they don't even know whether their family members are coming back, and it's so pathetic that we are having to have this discussion and we can't just focus on serving and caring, because that's what a Muslim is meant to do. And I've said this before, and I know Muslims get upset to hear this, but I don't blame non-Muslims whatsoever for their reactions. I don't, because Muslims, it's just too easy for them to blame the right or blame the Daily Mail or blame the whatever. The truth is that if the non-Muslim community doesn't and is unable to make the differentiation between a terrorist and their normal Muslim citizen, neighbor, friend or whatever, then that's your failing, not theirs. You can't just blame them and say, right, that's because they got their blinkers on. That's because they only read this particular media. They ignore the other media. No. It's upon us to go out there and prove that there's a difference. You have to go and show that there's a difference. And I want to just say for the record, because everyone's looking for a soundbite, okay? It is obligatory, not just from a patriotic point of view or from a legal point of view, but Islamically speaking, it is fardul ain. Meaning it's not good enough for you just to assume someone else is doing it. It is individually an obligation upon any Muslim to report to the security services or to any other authorities, and that does include, by the way, a mosque authority, a religious authority, in order to solve the situation. And solving the situation is either by pulling someone back or by realizing that it's gone way too far and the police need to get involved, the intelligence services need to get involved. It is an obligation, and it has always been an obligation. And I, as long as I know, have never heard it ever be uttered as never being an obligation in this country in my time. In the last 20 years of me practicing Islam, I have never heard any alim or any leader or any scholar not say that it's an obligation. So I just want to again repeat that and make it very, very clear. We do that. I heard that this chap was reported. I don't know where that came from or who said that. The intelligence agencies did say they knew of him, so I don't know where that came from. Whether they found it out themselves or whether someone did genuinely report him, but someone did their duty. Whoever's done their duty, they did their job right. Whether it was the Muslim community that turned him over as they should, and that's not being a sellout, okay? That's not being someone who is doing something incorrect. The exact opposite. The exact opposite. If people are going to go out there and destroy the religion, destroy our reputation, destroy themselves, then that's not going to be done on our turf. It's not going to be done under our name. That's their own problem. And we will absolutely in a flash turn you over whatsoever. But at the same time, if the public are thinking that just because someone has a beard and wears a hat and wears a headscarf, that these are the people who are guilty, then we're in a bigger mess than I ever thought. We're in a bigger mess than we ever thought. And that's the problem here, where the public are believing that anyone who's practicing an orthodox form of Islam, which is the nearly maybe over 2 million Muslims in this country that practice an orthodox version of Islam, and if you think that if the community thinks that someone who is guilty is someone who lives life different to them in certain ways, well then that's 2 million Muslims who live life different in certain ways, whether they believe something differently or wear something differently. That is not enough to be considered to be guilty. That is not enough to be considered a reason to be reporting people left, right and center. Otherwise we should all be reported. All should all be reported because we have Muslim names or because we're all brown or something stupid like that. So it's very difficult to talk about this in any kind of structured or normal or calm way, because there's so much nonsense that's around this. Whilst we sit here and talk all this stupidity, the Muslims are being accused of being unpatriotic and liars and deceivers and giving shelter to criminals. And we have, while all that nonsense is happening, we have real people who are hurting, and suddenly we're not allowed to hurt. I'm not allowed to grieve. I'm not allowed to cry for Safi. I'm not allowed to consider that's my daughter. I'm not allowed to think that could be for myself. I don't understand that. It's not right. It's not fair upon anyone. The families need their time. We also need our time. This is our city. We are feeling this, but people want answers, and so we're forced to then give answers and then give the sound bites to be entrapped like people want us to be entrapped. So let it go and let it happen. We don't have any other way of responding to this. It doesn't matter how many times we condemn something or how many times we state a truth. And I will say to the Muslims this as well. At this time, for you to kind of say, why does everyone blame us? What we're gonna, what have we done or whatever, whatnot? That's also not the correct response. It's just one of the realities of being a Muslim. It's the cost of being a Muslim. Life is never meant to be easy, and as a Muslim, life is going to be always more difficult. And if you don't understand that as a Muslim, you're not practicing the religion very well. So you must understand understand the default. There'll be civil libertarians who will be up in arms and saying, no, you must never accept guilt. I say, no, you must accept guilt, because that's what the community and society immediately assumes. For you to become defensive at the time where everyone is thinking, fearing, feeling that the Muslims are as a result of this, or this attack was, you just have to assume. You just have to assume that's the reality at this moment in time. And our response is to be built upon that premise, not one of defiancy and trying to be angry back and so on. But we have to be allowed to grieve as human beings as well. And I don't mean that with a Muslim hat. I mean as a normal person. So that's what I wanted to say. I don't think I'm going to create another separate video for questions. But I do want people to ask questions. I do want folks to put their questions in. If you can see the questions online, then you can also tell me them what they are as well. I do want to invite questions. I want people to be critical. That's the problem when you have a gathering. Maybe I'm too right-wing for you guys, but I don't like political correctness. Everyone's sitting here really quiet, being PC, you know. And especially if you're a non-Muslim here, I don't want you to be PC at all. I want you to, you know, ask the point. But I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
My question is that many of us who work in the Muslim community, we have a broad range of opinions, and the mainstream amongst us see that as a kind of takfiri kind of group, the ones that excommunicate Muslims and so on. And whilst we understand that as being a fringe opinion, it's not uncommon to come across one like that. And in instances where we're looking to implement our own sort of safeguarding, you know, what's our sort of boundary? You know, when we have somebody saying these kind of opinions to us, how do we then deal with that?
So if I can summarize your question, you're saying that within the Muslim community, if there are people, for example, who are extreme from an ideological point of view, such as, for example, they consider other Muslims to be non-Muslims, is that the marker where you start to report people? And how do we explain that? And there's two responses to that, one for the Muslim community, one for the non-Muslim community. And the Muslim community needs to understand, and they pretty much do understand if they've been educated correctly, that there's a big difference, Islamically speaking, in having variant theological opinions. And so, for example, the concept of excommunication, takfir, is not something which is unique to Islam. Excommunication is, even as an English word, it comes from a concept that's before Islam. So excommunication literally means that a person who is part of something now becomes not part of it, either because they excommunicate themselves, or rather you excommunicate them to identify them as something separate. Now this is a academic legal tool, something which is a necessity at certain times. So for example, if a Christian man was to come and he wanted to become Muslim, and he became Muslim, and then he said, but I want to believe in something, you know, which was something completely against the Islamic creed. So for example, he wanted to believe that Jesus is God. Okay, he has excommunicated himself from Islam, even though he said, I become Muslim. But when he said that he's become excommunicated, this is a legal status, an illegal reality. And that's it. There is no now further progression from that, from a legal point of view. One does not suddenly say, right, you have now become excommunicated, you're not a Muslim, and now the next step is you die. Okay? Now, the Muslims recognize that, and therefore, if someone excommunicates another person, then that is not the cause for reporting to the authorities, or that's a proof that a person is going to go and blow himself up, etc., etc. Absolute nonsense, and the Muslims know that. And what the non-Muslims need to hear for their response is that even though they might hear an opinion which is anathema to their own ideological beliefs or their own opinions, that does not make them a criminal or a extremist in the violent sense. Now, if a person, for example, knew that this is the initial step to a person's journey into violence and to terrorism and to murder, then that's a whole different story altogether. And there would be clear, there would be a clear difference between a person who considers another person a non-Muslim for some legal reason or some legal benefit or whatever, because there might be, and someone who's doing it as part of his bloodthirst and his reality to make revenge and to justify for himself on how to kill someone. I want to make something very clear. When Alan Henning, who's from here, from Greater Manchester, okay, from Bolton, when he was kidnapped by ISIS, okay, there were many people over there that tried to reach out to ISIS via videos and via internet and so on, and say, listen, if you want to justify what you have done with Alan Henning on some kind of Islamic legal basis, then let's debate. If you want to try and claim the academic high ground or theological kind of high ground, then let's debate upon those two bases. And they were utterly refuted. Utterly refuted. Sheikh Walid Basyuni, another one of my colleagues, he did a 2-part series on the theological background of the ISIS ideology, and he dismantled it bit by bit. There is not a single possible, and I say this as a legal scholar, not a single possible justification legally, I'm not talking emotionally and whatever, for any of their actions at any time, at any level. I don't need to go back and explain to you what they did to Alan Henning, okay? Because you can just see what they did to Safi. They killed a girl, a baby girl, okay? There is no legal basis for their actions, and we must be very, very clear for the Muslim community and the non-Muslim community that it is a vast difference between someone being different to you, to non-Muslims in a complete way, and then within the Muslim community, some Muslim praying differently or believing certain things differently, and from them being a terrorist. And we have to be very forceful about that, very clear about that, and we have nothing to hide there whatsoever. Yeah.
As a follow-up, obviously, in terms of Manchester, particularly ISIS in Syria, obviously this isn't the first young person who's had either been influenced by them or not. We had the young man who travelled to Syria and he was killed. We had the 3 girls who went to join ISIS. So obviously the perception is that there's some sort of issue, and obviously we have to appreciate that there is something going on as to how this is occurring. And obviously the question is asked is, what are you doing? And myself, and many of the people here participate in that to clarify to young people and so on. But the question is, how do we now move forward to try and reach these young individuals who are quite clearly being influenced and planning the means to carry out these attacks?
So, to summarize that question, what you're basically saying is that it's not difficult to see that Manchester is contributing its share to this whole terrorism situation. People having gone to Iraq, people having gone to Syria, as you're saying, and then obviously here as well, wherever this person was radicalized or trained or turned, whether it was in Libya or whether it was in Syria, we don't know. And you're right. It's not possible to say that there's not a problem. And this is what is so irritating to hear from Muslims who try to say it's not a problem. And that just infuriates the wider community. They've got to look at that, and Muslims have got to realize that any person looking in from the outside sees a city and sees a number of people that are caught or whatever and so on. And the truth is this is the only of the things that we know about. Again, with the conversations that I've had with various police and so on average, nearly every day something is stopped. So if we even knew the figures in real life of what's going on, then it would be even more crazier. The truth is that this is at its core, we have to divide responsibilities. Everyone has a responsibility. Everyone has to be a leader, okay? And we mustn't pretend that we're some kind of, Superman and superhuman beings are able to do everything and solve an international disease that has blighted the world for the last I don't know how many years, when we can't even solve parking on a Friday prayer. Okay? We literally couldn't do anything. And we're suddenly meant to solve this huge problem that's affecting and destroying lives of millions of people around the world. We don't have the answers to the wider problem. But what we all can do is to focus on our specific areas. So for example, myself, when I have the opportunity to someone who trusts me enough to come and confide their fears or their deviant beliefs, I have a responsibility of making a judgment call on this person can easily be solved by, why do you believe that? Bam, 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 bam. What's your evidence? Do you accept this as an evidence? And hopefully person is out. Or I come across a person where I know that this person is gone too far. And it's out of my remit, way above my pay grade, and we've got to get the security services involved. And I think that for people to assume that the Muslim community has this amazing ability to be able to fix this because it's somehow our problem. It's not our problem, it's our people who are involved in a wider problem. And so the community, the security service, intelligence services, the government, the police, non-Muslims, every single individual has their own responsibility. So a non-Muslim person has their own responsibility of not being, just being normal, and not being racist or being an Islamophobe or whatever. And a Muslim has their responsibility of making sure that they're also normal and not racist and not a xenophobe, and that if they see people who are doing or showing any kind of signs in any kind of way, that they are reported, that they are put forward to the authorities. And the authorities have got their responsibility of making sure that they don't take their eye off the game, and making sure that they're following up everything correctly, and that they're they're giving the right resources to the right areas to make sure that everyone does their job in the right way, that the funding is there, that the resources are there. The government has its own responsibilities of not creating red herrings and just populist figures for everyone to hate upon, and missing the real work that needs to be done by banning speakers that have got nothing to do with the problem whatsoever, and just keeping populist rags happy and making the tabloids happy, but instead not focusing on the real issues on the ground. Not just creating lists and saying these are 22 signs of radicalization, where it includes, for example, a person becoming somehow virtuous. I remember reading one sign of radicalization is that if a person stops lying, for example, or stops doing things which are part of normative society, and starts to say, for example, if you lied and in front of that person and you said, don't lie, it's not good, then this is a sign of positive virtue. Like that's a criminal sign. This is the stupidity that we have within our overall, the whole program. So, as every Muslim is going to say, if we were able to suddenly click our fingers and to come up with a solution ourselves, then we'd have done that a long, long time ago. The truth of the matter is that these are very complex matters, that they have many different factors, and that every single one needs to be dealt with in every single way, with the right measure, with the right people. And yes, the Muslims have a greater responsibility to be reporting, to be more vigilant, to be, if you're not sure, and I would say something specifically now to the Muslims, okay? And this is very important because I can see a number of questions like this online, and I think I want this to be my most important message. If you are doubtful, if you have seen whatever you've seen and you're not sure whether it's enough or not enough, then come and see me. And go and see a scholar, and go to an Islamic leader. He will tell you whether that's enough or not. If you are afraid of that responsibility or that pressure, that I'm going to shop the Muslims, I'm going to shop basic people, I might make a mistake. If you fear that, then put it upon me. My shoulders were built for that. I'll deal with it. If you have a fear about a person, and you're not sure that am I just putting an innocent guy just in, whatever, the security services are saying the same thing as I am. Okay, they will deal with who they feel is a genuine threat and who isn't, and who is not worth it, and whatever. And if they make a mistake, they make a mistake. You've heard this phrase a million times, and the reason you heard it a million times is because it's true. They got to get it right 10 out of 10, and the terrorists is only got to get it right once. And so we expect mistakes to be made by our intelligence and security services. And we should also expect mistakes by people like us who are doing the filtering, and the public who make that mistake of not reporting someone. You are not the guilty one because you made a judgment call. You're not sure, is this person being turned or not. But I'm making a direct appeal to you and direct statement. If you are unsure and you do not want to be a government sellout or whatever you fear by going to the security services, then I respect that. Come and put it on my shoulders. Go and take it to your local imam and he will tell you. When you describe that person and put forward everything accurately and put the details forward, that this is what has happened, this is what I've seen, this is whatever, put it upon that person and they will make that judgment call that this is too far or this isn't. This is just a person who's having a different, mood, or this is a person who's just got a fancy for that type of clothes, or he's traveling or whatever. It could be a different answer. If you're not sure, put it upon our shoulders. But no one's doing it. I'm going to be honest. I don't care about what media claim about me or not claim about me. I'm doing my bit, I'm not doing my bit. I'm delighted to sit with anyone. No one comes. The truth is, this is more just PR really what's happening right here. I wish that people took me seriously right now. I'll tell you something. The only people who took me seriously were not even people in this country. I was telling one of the chaps over there that the only time that I have had openly people come up to me was in Sweden. And you know what? I had a respect almost for that community that they were willing to challenge me upon what I was saying. I went to Gothenburg and I gave a lecture at a conference there, and it was a lecture on the ideology of the Khawarij and what leads to people. And I chose that topic, even though I was not meant to speak about that, okay, and that got me in some trouble as well with the organizers, but I wasn't meant to speak about that. But when I was on the way, I found out that this city in particular had a real problem with people who were going to Syria and fighting and coming back. At that time, I don't know if the laws changed right now, it was legal apparently, meaning that, it's not, if you come back then your passport gets confiscated, etc. That wasn't the case. It was quite legal for you to stay there. And I thought this is the major issue, and I was told that these people will come to the conference. And so I addressed it head on in the conference. And in the middle of my lecture, and you know what kind of lectures we give and what kind of conferences, the scene, how, everyone's very quiet, it's not whatever. They interrupted, imagine on a keynote lecture, and argument back and forth. And I said to him, listen, my flight's tomorrow. I'm not running away. And, I'm not, and neither am I scared. I'm not worried. Give me 10 minutes. Let me finish my piece. Then we go outside. I didn't say go outside. We go outside. But I mean, there was a whole group of them. There was like about 50, maybe 60 of them. Yeah. I said, we'll go outside and we'll talk about it. And that's exactly what happened. I finished my lecture. I then went outside and all of them followed me out. And it was like being at school again. Yeah, in the playground. I was in the middle and I'm surrounded entirely by 60 people. And the organizers, desperately trying to get in, whatever, they're thinking the thing's going to become violent. But they weren't being violent about it at all. They were very angry with the things that I had said. And they were trying to say to me, you haven't seen the reality. We've just come back, and so on and so forth. And by the way, the police were in there, in that gathering. I just wanted to show you how cultures have different realities. The police, intelligence services, the head of police was at that conference, okay? And they were outside in that gathering, allowing it to go, because I don't think anything illegal was going on. That's why I'm guessing, okay? And ultimately, I don't think anything illegal, quote unquote, was said. But they were saying that we've come back, whatnot. I was saying, let me just be very clear to you and straight. Answer my single question. Is it permissible at all to do any of the following actions? And I went through all of the possible: car bombing, suicide, innocent life, marketplaces, schools, this, that, Muslim countries, non-Muslim countries, this, that, whatever, whatnot. And some were hardcore, saying this is permissible, that's impermissible, this is permissible. Others were saying, you tell me, and then we got into a to and fro. Allah says this, the verse says that. What about then? I'm reading back. They were openly debating. I did my bit. Nothing happened to me. 2 hours I stood outside. 2 hours. Okay? And that continued back and forth. And then suddenly the crowd dissipated and everyone just went their right way. And I went back to my hotel, came back here. That's the one and only time for all of my lectures of speaking about it, which are all monologues. No one speaks up. No one, whatever. In actual person, it was the only time I'd been challenged. Only time. And I had a begrudging respect for that, because it seemed like they were genuine. It seemed. Now, what happened after that, I don't know. That was, I don't know how, a couple of years ago. In our life now, no one comes. It's all online. And they're all hiding behind Abu X and Abu Y and Abu Z. and they've all got profile, flag this and the black flag that and God knows what, or a machine gun or whatever. And they're all calling you disbeliever, you apostate, you dog, you this, that, whatever. So, when you hear this concept of cowards, how they target innocent folks. They were cowards before they even targeted any innocent folks. They were cowards because they weren't willing to debate with us either. They were cowards because they hide online behind names and identities that can't be traced or whatever, I don't know. And by the way, I just want to say to you that as someone who obviously is pro-civil liberties and obviously has their own phone and have my own WhatsApps and my own, social messaging, I think that the Muslim community has to be mature and recognize, and I mean the wider community as well, especially the left, that get very angry about this being an issue of civil liberties. I think that we do need to reassess the situation with our personal data and access. And I know that it's a very, very difficult balance that needs to be achieved, but you got to look at it from the security services point of view, non-Muslims point of view, those who are affected, that if there's a possibility that a person on an individual basis has information that could help, then there has to be the legal reality that allows that to help make sure that no other further attacks happen. And getting that balance right with the fact of just not being able to monitor every single person and everything they do is obviously the $64 million question that needs to be solved. But I'm just saying that the Muslims, specifically, really, we've got to be mature about this. I know, this is the time when we start talking about all of these victims, and we talk about the dead and the injured, and someone online is going to say, you dog, you didn't mention the 60 Syrian children who died yesterday, and last week there were 100 children who died in Iraq and whatever. And you know what? They're right, I didn't. But there's no contradiction between me not mentioning them and crying for them and worrying about them and also worrying about today. And there's also no contradiction in the human natural response of being more angry about people who are close to home. This is human nature. You do feel things when they happen in your own hometown. Manchester is my hometown. That arena, I've been to that arena. I've been inside that arena. I've been outside that arena. I go past that arena. Every other place that people go to, Westminster Bridge. I've walked in that exact same place on Westminster Bridge where that guy, he did what he did. Every single person feels something more. And likewise, it's also human nature for non-Muslims to be more angry about people. I also dislike the fact that Facebook Safe went on for this and Facebook Safe went on for that, but did you put Facebook Safe on for Istanbul or whatnot? Well, guess what? The one who made Facebook and the majority of its employees and whatever, that is their demographic. That's their ethnic background. You know what? So they have the right to be able to care more about their own people. All right? If they want to do that, that's their own problem. But why are we complaining about that? If they were to do it to other people and other ethnicities, that'd be great. But you know what? Don't sit there just moaning and saying that why are you just doing it for their own people? Because you know what? Everyone has a greater affinity for the ones that they identify more with. So, like I said, there's a lot of lessons that come out of this. But again, how disgraceful that we talk about lessons and things and whatever when there's a real human tragedy which has happened. A real human tragedy with real people and. So we'll take 1, 2, and then 3. Yeah.
I just want to go back on your point. I know you're saying that we should report people and stuff like that, but I'm just trying to see, like for example, the hadith where it says don't be suspicious of people. So how do we not? Because obviously it's a clear hadith.
The hadith of وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, the hadith. So what the sister is saying is that how do we tie this in with not being suspicious of people and so on? Listen. Everyone needs to hear this message. The Muslims are not spies, and we are not intelligence services, and we're not security services, and it's not our job. What our job is to report terrorists. Our job is not to be spies. Our job is not to go around and pretending to be people we're not and bugging people and whatever. This is what's impermissible. Okay? From us. It's permissible for people who are in authority when they suspect something. Then it is permissible. This is not being suspicious. So this is not the understanding of the hadith. So I want to make it clear that what's being prohibited is for us to go and to assume the worst from people who are innocent and just poking around in normal people. The truth is that when you do see that which makes you suspicious and makes you feel that something is going wrong, then that has to be reported. That is not something which is suspicion or some haram activity. Yes.
Islam. I'm just wondering, you said about human first and all the shock and the tragedy.
what you're saying is that if I'm not sure I understood your question. You're saying that the Muslims themselves who are hurting as a result, what are Muslim leaders doing for them?
Yeah, so for example, in our local area, the church has opened up with an open space for people to talk about it, to light a candle, to write a message of love and support.
So, but what you're saying is that pastoral support is being given to Christians by the Christian community.
It's given to everyone. But
Okay, right, and you're saying that what are the Muslims doing?
I feel like Muslims pastoral support.
Yeah, I mean, I guess look, I certainly know behind the scenes, on an individual basis, of many things happening. You know, and I know. People who went to the area, people wanting to give first aid, people wanting to give people lifts, the Muslim taxi drivers, those that were have homes and shops nearby, opened them up to give people shelter. And if I come and I put out on Facebook, anyone who wants help, advice, and so on and so forth, people do in their own individual capacity what they do. Can I say to you that the mosques did a formal opening, meaning a formal kind of come here and receive support and care? I don't know. What I do know is that no mosque would ever refuse that, or no mosque is ever closed to anyone at any time, other than between 11 and 3 o'clock at the night at the moment. But the rest of the time it's open. So, and I guess your point is that we should be more coordinated in that. And do it in a more formal sense, which I think I think is a very important lesson.
Even for the Muslims.
Yeah.
Is that
I have a feeling that the Muslim community is similar to the Catholic community, that we don't need to advertise that. Catholics don't need an advertised board outside to know to go and confess to their, to the priest, to go and speak and to get advice and so on. It's part and parcel of their game. Okay. Likewise, I think the Muslim community is the same way. People contact their scholars and their imams on an individual basis. There's no such thing, meaning that everyone knows that 5 times a day the imam is going to be there, and so I can catch the imam at that time. Mosques that have offices and are fortunate enough, like ours here in Shidal, then you know that you can actually come at any time and find and contact whatever. I don't think that it's the other way around, where there's understood that there needs to be an appointment made in a formal sense. Allah Alam, that's what I think. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. What does Abu Isa think about, I wouldn't say the majority, but many of the attacks are performed or done by reverts? Are they trying to prove a point beyond what?
I can tell you that there's no doubt that there will be some similarities and common factors in converts or reverts doing these attacks. But certainly the fact that a person is a convert has nothing to do with the actual overall thing. This chap was not a convert, for example, and the last 5 or 10 were not converts. So yes, I agree with you that there has to be some social, even maybe mental stability issues with a person who has left their faith and come into another one, and immediately, as opposed to coming into a faith to find guidance or whatever, has rather come into a faith to satisfy their bloodlust, for example. So, it's sure there might be some factors that are common between that particular group, but then we should ask the questions, is there a particular factor that is common between the Pakistani genre of terrorist and the Libyan genre of terrorist and the Algerian and the Somali and so on? So I think that if you study all of them, you will find that. For example, you might find that all of the Somali Western terrorists went to Somalia recently, or the Libyan ones went to Libya, or the Pakistan ones got and trained in Kashmir or whatever. I'm sure there is, but I don't think that we can, and I don't think that we can deduct anything else further than that. Okay, guys, we have to stop for the prayer. I will go back onto online and try to address some of these questions as much as possible, and I will be available over the next few days for questions in person as well, inshallah. For those folks who are attending LP, this is obviously what took over our lesson. I hope you appreciate that. Obviously, this is a Manchester-based class, logical progression, and it genuinely has kept us awake over the last 3-4 days. It's been a horrible time. A really, really horrible, stressful, difficult time for everyone in Manchester. I'm not now speaking as a Muslim. I'm speaking just as a Manc. I mean, I just want to say to you, I was not born in this city, okay? I've lived here for 20 years, but over 20 years. But I will say something, is that I chose to live in this city. People who know me know that I actually came to live here before then, saw its people, saw its reality, saw its culture, saw the way that it deals with the problems. I was here when the IRA bombing happened. I was also here in the aftermath and how people responded. I had Irish friends at that time as well. I saw the pressure that came upon them before we even knew what pressure was as a Muslim community. I also know how they responded. I also know how the wider community then embraced them as well, like it should have done and like it did. And I genuinely believe, and I'm very, very serious here, that we have to have more trust, and I wrote that yesterday, we have to have more trust in our wider community. They are educated and they are good people and they know the difference, and we've just got to reinforce that. We've got to make sure that we show that more and more. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.